Don't forget to knock on the chorus. You have it in another book?
Oh, yes, I do.
Well, there's no flats in this book. What's the matter with it?
That's not the problem. There's too many accidentals.
Occidentals?
Accidents.
Accidentals.
Yes, accidentals.
We're not talking about accidents in our house, are we, Butch?
Go ahead. We'll give it a shot.
Okay, you can do it. Just leave those accidentals off.
Yeah, right.
First and last, don't forget to knock on the chorus. Is there anything too hard for God to do? Is there aught beyond His power? He commanded us to open wide our mouth. We should ask our needs this hour. We should ask and seek. You ready? Keep knocking at the door at Jesus' feet. We have not our needs because we do not plead with Jesus. Hold it. Some people didn't knock. Josh, Patrick just caught up. If you didn't knock this time, we're going to do the chorus through one time so you'll know when you knock. This is a fun song, all right? Just the chorus. Ready? We should ask and seek. Here it comes. Keep knocking at the door at Jesus' feet. We have not our needs because we do not plead. Now the fourth verse. Here we go. We may ask in Jesus' name or ask in faith, pray united or alone. But pray we should plead till it is done. Make your knocking loud. We should ask and seek, not on the wall, on the pew. Knocking at the door at Jesus' feet. We have not our needs because we do not plead with Jesus. Okay, Patrick, why couldn't we get this to work? Huh? All these tech-savvy guys. Okay, let me give you a couple prayer requests. First of all, Robin Jambalik's friend. I can't remember her name, but she either had a stroke or some problem where she was having difficulty, so she asked us to pray for her. I think it's Anita, A-N-I-T-A. Something like that. That may be the wrong name too, but the Lord knows who we're praying for. So keep praying for her. Pray for Jeannie and the family. They had the flu this past few days and a lot of throwing up, nastiness. Pray for the weather. Sunday night, I am going to bring a proposal before the church, and I think I can gather a lot of support for it. Next February, we're closing the church, and we're all going to Florida for the whole month. No, everybody pays their own, but we'll just go down there, live on the beach, and have services on the beach. Okay, Shirley? Yeah, okay. Patrick? Rub it in. Just rub it in.
Oh, Brittany's dad did the same thing to her. He's in Florida too.
Does anybody watch my Facebook? Did you see the post I put on with the snowman?
Yeah, I requested a friendship with you, so.
You did? Oh, you will? Well, I posted this video. Somebody posted it on my Facebook, and I whatever you do to forward it or whatever. This girl gets out of her car, and she's wading through knee-deep snow and barely making it up past this big snowman right beside her garage, and she's carrying a briefcase. And she gets up to that snowman, she just grabs that briefcase and swings it and knocks his head off. And my post on it was, a lot of us are feeling that way right now. So by tomorrow, if we get what they're calling for, last I heard was 4 to 7. So, tired of it.
I just want to get it over with and be done.
Well, that's what I said. You know, we've had a lot of these little piddly ones. I'd have rather had two 18-inch snows, one at the beginning of the winter and one at the end of the winter, and been done with it. But I do thank Gene for shoveling off the sidewalks tonight. He was busy at it when we got here. And then I tried to get him to let Josh help him. He wouldn't do it. He's so stubborn. You'll be sore in the morning, won't you? Well, we appreciate it anyway. All right, prayer request. I saw a hand. Barb?
I had something posted on my wall from, a pro-life. There were two young girls that were asked to be prayed for. One was 19 and one was 20. 20-year-old was deserted by her husband. She's 18 weeks pregnant, and another one was 12 weeks pregnant, and they were asking all Christians to pray for these two young girls so they don't choose abortion.
Okay. Two girls to choose life. Shirley.
Pray for me. I have to go to the lung doctor and a heart doctor this next week.
Okay, Carolyn went to both of them already no, not the lung doctor, but the heart doctor, I think. Shirley, I got you here somewhere. I can't find it. This thing's so messed up. I'm going to have to redo it all. Doctor appointment, APPTS. Isabel, we're praying for your mom. Any update?
I have a praise. She is back home. I think it might be an ulcer or just something bothering her side, but,
Patrick told me she just needed to be burped.
well,
No, he didn't say it exactly that way.
she was feeling very ornery yesterday, and I managed to calm her down, but, so, and then Rhonda would like prayer. She's having some financial difficulties, and keep Simone in prayer, who's just struggling with everything in general.
So Isabel's mom and Rhonda. Patrick.
Dave Edwards and his wife, they're close to my age, and they just found out that they may be expecting a baby, which is unexpected.
Expecting the unexpected. No, he does not.
They're a very strong Christian couple, so
Good.
obviously they're, accepting whatever is God's will.
How many children do they have?
We'll get to.
Just two? This will make three?
They got a middle school and a high school, so it's a pretty good gap there.
Yeah, all you ladies that are laughing, I wouldn't be laughing about that. You know, God may say,
You know what happened to Sarah?
that's right. Nothing is impossible with God. Anybody else? Butch. They totaled the car. These two were in an accident last night. No, Monday night. Slid on some ice. There was 4 accidents on 896 just below our house down there, and they were one of them.
Who were they?
Butch and Autumn.
We're okay. Got a little airbag to the face, but other than that.
Well, okay is kind of a general term there.
There was a car sideways in the middle of the road when we crested a little hill. We didn't see it until it was too late. I turned, we went up one embankment, came down the road, hit more ice, went right across the other embankment. Didn't hit any cars or kill anybody, so it's all good.
Sure.
God was the only reason we didn't do more than that.
Janice?
Keep Joey in prayer, because right now with his attitude and so forth, he's supposed to have a home visit the end of this month, and at this point, we don't have it.
He's supposed to come home at the end of this month?
Just for a home visit
Oh.
for the weekend, but we're not gonna have it with the attitude.
Well, you know, we all are facing that trouble with our kids. Ryan is messing up by the numbers. He was supposed to go to work at Handicrafters, didn't show up, and they fired him. They got him a second chance last Friday. So, was it yesterday morning or Monday morning? Monday, Rover didn't run, so he couldn't go to work. Then Tuesday, Rover ran. He goes out to get on a bus, and the story goes that he fell and fractured his ankle. The story that the lady from the home gave me was that it was a torn ligament of some type, which is called, in the medical terminology, according to her, a fracture. So it must be a ligament fracture, not a... So, one excuse after another. He never shows up for work. So pray for Joey.
That's the same type of thing, Joey, because laid down the rules and he said, well, now you know why I didn't want to come back there. And I said, fine, don't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but.
Well, that's what it is. The kids, when they've gone, and Josh will tell you, I told him, I've told Ryan, the rules at the house are the same. In the prodigal son, when the prodigal son came home, the father's rules in his house had not changed. He didn't change anything. It was just a hard attitude of the prodigal son when he came home that had to get right. So we're praying for you and for Valerie. Anybody else? Ruth, you over your... All right, Ruth has been sick, and so has Jen. Jen has been real sick, so pray for her. Seems like there's somebody else I should have... Huh?
Frank didn't feel well.
Frank is still not over his either. So let's just pray for all the sick folks.
Also, Anna would like prayer. She applied to Christiana Hospital for residency. So we'd like prayer that the Lord's will be done in that.
Okay? Doesn't seem like she should be old enough. I remember the day she was born. Yep. We're just getting old. Old and decrepit, aren't we? Aren't we? My mom. I started to call you Granny, and I didn't want you throwing a hymn book at me. Anybody else?
Little praise, Bob and I last week went to the heart doctor and we both had very good visits and everything's fine.
Amen.
Just want to give encouragement.
Well, Carolyn went. Do you want to give a praise on your, or don't you have the results back yet? She goes to the heart doctor, or no, did an echo on when? And went for some other female tests today. And when she got to the female test today, her blood pressure was 1/95. They wanted to put her in an emergency room, and she wouldn't do it. So it's just always that with us. What are you going to do? And I'll give a praise. This is the third day of my diet, and I'm sticking to it. 3 whole days. Of course, I'm on 2 diets because I can't get enough to eat on just one. But anybody else before we pray? All right, let's pray. Father, we come to you tonight. We're grateful for all the folks that are here. We pray that you keep folks safe on the way home. And Lord, we know it's not supposed to freeze before we get out of here, but if there are any slick spots still, please put your hand on the cars. Keep everybody safe going home. And we pray for these requests that we've just mentioned, as well as all the others on the lengthy list that we have, that, Father, you'd meet the need, that those that are sick would have a touch from you. If they're close to glory land, that, Lord, you would give them comfort. If they're struggling with any other physical problems, that you give them strength and courage and help them to know that you have their hand on them and you know everything that's going on. And I pray that you'd be with the ones who are having difficulty, as Butch and Autumn are, with the car situation, that, Lord, you'd open a way for the car, for them to find a good used car or a car that would meet their needs. We pray, Father, for our youngsters in our church, for Joey and for Valerie and for Ryan and the rest of them, for Adam and Simone and the other ones, that, Lord, you just draw them closer and closer to yourself. We pray for Rhonda, that you'd be with her. And, Father, we do ask that these 2 young ladies who are pregnant, that they would choose to give those babies a chance at life. And, Lord, we know that you don't make any accidents, that no one comes into this world except you've given that spark of life. And I pray that you'd help them to see how important it is to let these youngsters come into this world. And I pray that you'd supply the need for the home that they might need when they are born. If the girls can't keep them, that you'd supply proper adoptive parents for them. And Lord, now help us as we do a study tonight again in the book of James. We'll give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. We have had a long day. I'm sure you have too. It's nothing new. I'm beginning to think that's just the way life is going to be till Jesus comes. And if that's what it is, that's okay too. Where am I at? All right, we were in the book of James last week, and we're going to continue in the book of James this week. We said that James had a nickname. Does anybody remember what the nickname was in the book of James, or not in the book of James, but for James, what the nickname was for the man James?
Camel knee.
Old Camel Knees. And why was he called Camel Knees? Not you, Butch. Why was he called Camel Knees? Because he stayed on his knees and prayed often. The thought that we talked about last week is faith without works is dead. We talked about persecution a little bit, and that every good gift, every perfect gift comes down from the Father above. And the week before, I gave you a memory verse. Gloria, what is it? Well, because you were so good, sharp last week that you told Shirley about it. So, okay, what's it say?
Be a doer, not a hearer, something like that.
Shirley, help her.
Be ye doers of the word and not hearers, only deceiving your own selves.
All the girls say it now. James 1. Okay, boys, let's all the boys do it. Nope, you're wrong. Got to start with the address. James 1:22. Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. So we talked about that, and we've talked about a number of different other subjects here already, and I'm trying to find out where I want to start. Chapter 3 is where we're going to start tonight. And it's an interesting chapter because he goes into the concept of how the working of faith is more than just what we normally think about. Our service for God is not just what we do. It's not just being active in things that we can accomplish. Our service to God and doing it properly is also a part of what we say and how we say it. And this, if I had an opportunity to pick one chapter of the Bible that I think would change most churches the most, it would be a toss-up between 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, and this chapter. And the reason is because in the churches that I have been associated with in the time that I've been a Christian, I have seen more people destroyed uselessly and needlessly by words that were spoken without thought. We say that the book of James is a companion book to an Old Testament book, the book of Proverbs. And it talks in the first chapter about the wisdom. And the wisdom in Proverbs, the wisdom of James complement one another. I've challenged you sometimes to read the book of Proverbs through one chapter a day. Every month you could read the book of Proverbs through. I don't know who has ever taken me up on that, but I still try, I attempt to do that every day. And if you'll go through the book of Proverbs and you put a T behind every verse that has to do with speaking, you will find that there is an awful lot of wisdom in the book of Proverbs about how we speak, our lips, what we say, how we say it. Some of the verses are so beautiful. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. Just gives a wonderful, glorious thought about what words can do if they're used properly. But here in the book of James, as we begin verse 1, he tells us not to be many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. But we put bits in horses' mouths that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. So he begins to talk about this idea of speaking. And he says, don't strive to be many masters. We have too many people that they have to be, as I mentioned this past weekend, I think. They want to be the leader. They want to be in charge. They want to be up front. What they don't understand is the person that's in charge and the one that's up front has a greater opportunity for condemnation than one who's a follower. A leader, by what he says and how he says it, can influence people so dramatically. We had a perfect illustration of that yesterday when Benjamin Netanyahu addressed our Congress. The difference between the way he spoke and the speeches we're getting out of our own president are night and day. He did not speak in fairy tales or there's this new word in Washington. I don't think that they're using it properly, but they're calling things existential things. Well, he didn't speak in these ungrounded ideas or grandiose schemes. He put it bluntly, and he put it right on the line, and people got mad at him for it. The reason is, you want me to tell you, I think, in my opinion, one of the reasons is we're not used to leadership in America. I don't think we've had a good, solid leader since Ronald Reagan was a leader in America. Now, George Bush was a good president. I like George Bush, but he didn't match up to the way that Ronald Reagan could speak to people and have things happen because he knew the power of his words. George Bush was not near the statesman, I don't think, as Ronald Reagan was. But now, when you have such a contrast, people don't like it because it shows what we're missing in America. There's no reason for us to be wishy-washy. What kind of a picture is it? And I know this is a little political, and I didn't mean to get on this thing, but since I'm here, I'm going to camp here for a minute. What kind of a picture is it when the president or the prime minister of Israel is in our Congress speaking, our president doesn't even watch it on television, and our Secretary of State is over in Geneva in conferences with Iranians over whether they can have nuclear weapons or not? I could solve that diplomatic process. Now, Patrick knows I'm not very diplomatic. I could solve that diplomatic loggerhead they're over in Sweden trying to get resolved. I'd look at the other guy and I'd say, what part of no don't you understand? You are not getting a nuclear weapon. That's it. If we get wind that you're getting a nuclear weapon, and I wouldn't even say we're going to go get them, I would just say we're going to give Mr. Bibi the go-ahead light. Go do what he needs to do to protect his country. Why are we so afraid of that? Well, I know Pat says, well, if you do that, there's ramifications. Hey, there's ramifications if you don't do it. And so we need, in my opinion, a leader that's going to protect our nation and stand up and say what's right instead of getting these grandiose schemes and ideas, shredding the Constitution and going off on tangents about everything under the world. He is under greater condemnation than I am because he leads a whole country. He has the voice that speaks for America. Now, we don't like that because I like to say he's my president, but I don't like the policies that he has. But he is our president, and whether we like it or not, he does represent America around the world, even if we disagree how he's doing it. And so he's under greater condemnation. I said all that to get that illustration in, that we need to be careful about always wanting to have the leadership, always wanting to have to be the teacher, always wanting to be the head honcho in charge. I tell Carolyn all the time about her ladies' meetings and everything that she needs to delegate more. People who, in my mind, are micromanagers are ruining their lives. People who micromanage everything never can back away from anything. If you have a position of leadership, delegation is one of the best ways to get more things done. Because when you delegate, you reproduce yourself. And if you're micromanaging everything, then you're not reproducing yourself. You have to give people room to have their own ideas. I talked to one of the boys down at college. He may get to come up here if we would choose to invite him to help us as a youth pastor and visitation pastor and junior church worker and bus worker and anything else we'd decide to give him a title for. But I told him, I said, I don't expect you to come up here and be a clone of me. If you were a clone of me, I wouldn't need you. I'd just do it. And I try to get our young guys at college to understand that they're to support the pastor when they go up, but they cannot be a clone of the pastor. They have to have their own ideas, and they have to try to implement what he would do if he were there. But they still have to have their own ideas to do it. So don't always think that you have to be the one who's in the leadership position. Now in verse 3, he begins to talk. In verse 2 and 3, he begins to talk about how we bridle the whole body. The words and the power of words are something that most folks do not take in a significant way. Our words have the power to build up or the power to destroy. Our words have the power to either give life or to bring death. Our words have the power to either exhort somebody or completely devastate somebody. We can go to somebody, and the way we phrase things and what we say to them can lift them up, or it can dash their hopes for a long time. We have seen, as you have, churches and different people in churches that seem to make it their job just to keep people down and discouraged. We need to be a positive people. Whatsoever things are honest and just and good and pure and holy, think on these things, it says in the book of Philippians. And sometimes we're so negative. Josh and I were saying something, and Josh said it wasn't going to happen, and Mom says, well, you need to be a little more positive. And I said, well, Josh, just tell her you're positive it's not going to happen. Well, sometimes we have to be careful about the words we choose, because they can either lift people up in a positive way, or they can destroy them and defeat them in a negative way. And I don't know about you, but I'm realizing something more and more every week. I'm not as young as I used to be, and I know most of my life is gone. And what time I have left, I want to be an encourager and a builder, not a destroyer. I want to help folks become what they need to be for the Lord, and allow God to use my voice and my life to encourage them, not to defeat them. And that should be our goal. And so he tells us here how that comes about. In verse 2, he says, for in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man. Now again, what's the word perfect mean? What's it mean? No, not exactly. It means mature, right? None of us are sinless, except when God looks at us, our sins are all forgiven in his sight, but we all still have to confess our sins on a daily basis. But it does mean mature. If any of you are mature, he's saying, a mature man has been able to bridle the whole body. And then he goes into this statement, and he says, behold, we put bits in horses' mouths, that they may obey us and turn about their whole body. So how do we control our actions? What controls your actions? I know most of us immediately would say, well, it's what we think. Well, in a real way, that's part of it. But the Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. What you think about in your mind is what comes out of your mouth. You've heard people that sometimes when they get angry, it'll be a blue streak. Well, that's because they're thinking things much worse in their mind, and they do it on a pretty regular basis, and it's almost like trying to stop water rushing over a dam when they lose control of that and they let loose. So our minds, what we think about comes out of our mouth. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As we speak, so are we, according to this, because the tongue determines the direction that our bodies are going to take. If you get up in the morning and you say to yourself, oh, Lord, another day, guess what your day is going to be like? But if you get up in the morning, you can use the same words. Oh, Lord, another day. What's your day going to be like? Well, it may still stink in some respects, but you're going to be more on top of it than if you get up in a defeated manner to start with. Our attitude is set by how we speak and what we say, and the way that we come across to people with our words. They can tell whether we're angry, they can tell whether we're bearing their sorrow with them and their hurts, or they can tell if we're glad, they can tell if we're sad by how we speak and how we come across to them. So it's talking here about the idea that the power of the tongue has the power to direct. Horses, how many of you know much about horses? Raise your hand. Let me give you a horse lesson. When you catch a horse for the first time, you'd start breaking or gentling that horse. You don't put a bit in his mouth right away. You put either a rope bridle on, a training bridle, or you put a regular halter on him. And a halter has no bit. It just loosely fits around the face. And the rope halter that's used for training, the cowboys used to make them, and they're made out of nylon or rope. But the knots are strategically placed so that when you're pulling on that halter, it puts pressure on certain pressure spots in their face, and it makes them more pliable to what you want them to do. When you are ready to ride that horse, sometimes you will start with a training halter or a halter because they're not used. They've got so much going on in their mind, you don't want to overwhelm them with a bit in their mouth. But then the time comes when you want finesse with the action of the horse, and that's when bits come in. Now, there's differences in bits, and I'm not going to go into all that, but they all act pretty much the same. The horse has a full line of teeth along the front jaw, top jaw. But the bottom jaw, he has front teeth. He has a space between those teeth and then some more teeth in the back. And that little space is called a bar. And when you put a bit in a horse's mouth, it lays right in that bar space. Doesn't hurt him at all as long as it's just laying in that bar space. Now, he may not be used to it when you first put it in his mouth. You may see him try to tongue it and spit it out and all kinds of stuff. Of course, you can't do it because it's held in with the bridle. But that bit being in the proper position is an important point. When you are trying to turn a horse, he learns to give to you through pain. Now, I know that sounds horrible. We try to raise our kids and try to teach our kids that when they're riding a horse, they need to hold their reins like they're holding eggs, because you can hurt a horse's mouth severely and make him hard-mouthed if you yank and jerk too much on that bridle. But the point of that bridle is he learns that if he obeys you, the pain is not there. Now, what causes the pain? Well, if any of you have ever clicked your tooth with a fork, it doesn't feel good. I mean, it's not excruciating pain unless you have a bad tooth, but it doesn't feel good. There's something about the way that our teeth have nerves that when metal hits our teeth, it just doesn't always feel good. And so when you turn a horse's head with that bit in his mouth, it makes this side of the bit go back against his back jaw, and it makes this side of the bit pull up against his front jaw, against the front teeth. And so when you pull him, he's reacting to pain. We train horses when we're pulling them, we flex them. You'll take the rein way down and you'll pull it, not yank on it, but you'll pull with steady pressure until that horse gives his head clear around to touch your foot. And you can feel it. When that horse starts his head around, you're pulling him. But there's a point there where he will stop. And you don't jerk, you let him stop. But then he gives his head, and then you let go of the rein. And it gets a little farther each time. And not too many days into that training, you just touch that rein and he'll pull that head right around. Because he knows that's the easiest way to get rid of that bit against his face. Now listen, why do you think God uses that illustration with human beings? It's a very, very simple thing here. If we would watch for the pain that we cause people with our tongue, it would control us. Now, you all know that I tease and I joke a lot. But you've also heard me say, if I hurt somebody's feelings, I never intend to do that. And if I know that I've hurt their feelings, I apologize to them and I stop teasing them about whatever hurt their feelings. So when we learn how we are able to give people pain, it controls what we say. If we learn by our words and our voice what gives people growth and encouragement, that controls what we say. Just like a bit that's in a horse's mouth. The older I get, I never used to be this way, and it's still difficult at times, but the older I get, I sometimes stop and think and choose my words before I speak in certain situations. Because there's times when you can just say what you think in a very untactful way, intending it for good, and because of the way we say it or the way it's taken, people don't understand what we're meaning and it hurts people. Now, this concept is very important. As a matter of fact, it might not be too bad for you to write it down. What you say and what you intended to say and what people think you said and what you really said may be 4 different things, depending on the perspective you're looking at it. And that's important for us to keep in mind. There are times that Butch and I, we tease each other mercilessly, and people will look at us and they'll think we're mad at one another. Well, I don't too often get mad at Butch. I stay mad at him. No, but it's not that at all, but that's just the way we are. But if Butch had a thin skin, like he gets sometimes, I back off from him a little bit if I can. It's hard for me because I'm so used to just nailing him every time he throws me a softball, hitting it out of the park. And when I throw him one, I expect him to hit it out of the park. But if you're hurting people by what you say, is that really what we want to do? I would think not. I would hope not. And so this concept that the bridle changes the direction of our whole lives, it turns about the whole body. It changes the influence that we have on people because of what we say and how we say it. Let's look at some words from the book of Proverbs about how we can have a problem with our tongue. Proverbs 16:27. Isabel, you want to look that up? And let me see, Mrs. Gilbert, will you look up Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 18? Hit it, young lady.
Proverbs 16:27. An ungodly man diggeth up evil, and in his lips there is as a burning fire.
Have you ever seen a church set on fire? I don't mean burned down. There was one over in New Jersey just this past week that had a fire. But churches are often set on fire by that little wicked kindling stick called a tongue. Sometimes people will start saying things and they're not true, and one person will hear it and it'll become more and more untrue and added to and more complicated as the story goes along. And before long, you have a whole church that's on fire. People are upset. People are leaving in church. People don't want to be around. And it's a problem. And it all starts with the fire, with the tongue. The tongue as it were a kindling stick. Carolyn, read yours for us.
There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health.
Okay, verse 6 says, and the tongue is a fire, in chapter 3 of James, the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity, so that the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and set on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. And so the contrast here that we're trying to get you to see is, and we're not going to go through every one of these verses, but the contrast that I want you to see is, there's a good way to use your tongue, and there's a bad way to use your tongue. Proverbs 12:18. Did I give that to anybody?
Yes.
Is that the one you just read?
Yes.
Read it again for me.
There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health.
Okay, a tongue properly used is health. It's like medicine. When somebody needs a pick-me-up in a physical world, they go to a doctor and he probably puts them on vitamins. He finds out what the problem is and he tries to encourage them and get them well again. And sometimes in Christian circles, people need a pick-me-up, and instead of picking them up, some Christians think it's their duty to make them feel worse. He's not here tonight, but let me just tell you about Dane. Dane, I appreciate Dane. He's a fighter. He's not throwing in the towel. And everybody knows, or probably does by now, that Dane has had a background in drugs, and we've been praying for him for a long time. He's not throwing in the towel. Well, he's going to fail once in a while. Yeah, probably will. But is his failing in drugs any worse than somebody's failing to not stop gossip? So do we encourage Dane, or do we put our foot on him and try to push him down? No, we encourage people, and that's where the medicine of the tongue comes in. And you don't have to give a lecture. Sometimes you just put your arm on somebody's shoulder and say, I love you, brother. I'm praying for you. Know that you're going through some struggles. I'm praying for you. I'm there for you. Need me, call me, as Michael would say. If you need me, call me. So the idea is, do you want to be a medicine, or do you want to be a sword that cuts people up and dices and slices and minces people? What good does it do? Does it make anybody really bigger to tear somebody else down? That's one thing about that speech with Netanyahu that just stuck out to me like a sore thumb. You got all these little bitty banty roosters running to microphones screaming about how he lectured us. Somebody needs to lecture us. I'm sorry. He should have stayed home, not come over here embarrassing the president. Hey, the president doesn't need any help in being embarrassed. He does a good enough job of that on his own. I'm saying the tongue can either build up or tear down. It can be a medicine, it can be a sword. And then the last few verses of this chapter, from the middle verses from chapter 9 to verse 12, it says, therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessings and cursing. Now underline this next phrase, my brethren, these things ought not so to be. You know, there's language that may not be taking the Lord's name in vain, but there is language that I kind of believe is just not wholesome words. There's language that people use, sometimes we call it secondhand cussing, and sometimes it's just vulgar words, that should not be in the mouth of a Christian. What do we need to prove? That we're enough like the world that we can learn all those four-letter words? You know, you want to impress somebody, close your mouth when you're about to utter a four-letter word, think about what you're saying and put it into English, and maybe you can express your point a whole lot better. Four-letter words are a dime a dozen. Any idiot can use a four-letter word. We were talking the other day at breakfast, my brother and I, and we were talking about my dad's favorite cuss word. And he only had one. It's the only one I ever heard him really use, and it was horse hockey, only it wasn't hockey. And he'd get mad, and that'd come out of his mouth. Well, I tend not to dwell on that word too often, because if I had a word that I would use, it would probably be that, because I heard it so often when I was a kid. But the truth is, I don't want that word coming out of my mouth. Josh gets upset if I use the word ass around the house, not meaning human anatomy, but meaning donkeys. And he says, I shouldn't use that. And I said, well, it's in the Bible. He said, we still shouldn't use that. I said, well, if I should use it or not, I'm still going to kick your donkey. So you just have to understand that, you know, some things go a little different. What was that? The drums and the cymbal? Okay. But the truth is, there's some language that is not a blessing to anybody. And so it can be a delight, though. Doth a fountain send, verse 10, does a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So no fountain both yields salt water and fresh water. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. If you have a bitter envyings and strife in your heart, glory not and lie not against the truth. So the tongue has the ability to either give good water or bad water, to be a blessing or to be a curse. And in our lives, in a church situation, if we're going to show our faith by our works, we need to show our faith by watching our mouth. You've heard this joke, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Years ago, a preacher told this story that a woman came forward in one of his revivals and said to the preacher, I've been a horrible church gossip and I want to lay my tongue on the altar. And the evangelist knew of her reputation and said to the woman, I'm not sure the altar's long enough for you to lay your tongue on it. So we need to be careful about what we say and how we say it. We need to be a blessing and not a cursing. If we lack wisdom, we'll ignore those verses. If we look in the mirror of God's word and we're a hearer and not a doer, we will ignore those verses. Wouldn't it be great if we just started practicing sweet talk all the time to everybody? Now, we have a good church family, and I really pray that we keep it that way. It gets a little tight sometimes. I tell folks we have business meetings, and when you have business meetings, you have difference of opinion. But if we agree to disagree agreeably, and that's just the way it ought to be. You don't have to holler and shout and scream. We can just be agreeable and disagree and go with what the majority wants to do on some stuff. So let's think about our tongue, that bridle of a horse. Look at the pain. Think about the pain that others have caused you or you've caused others by a tongue in the past. And let's not have that in our lives. Let's ask God to give us victory over it so that we can be mature Christians, mature people. Father, thank you for James and for the wisdom that we saw tonight about the tongue. Help us to watch what we say. Help us to think before we speak. Help our words to be those words which would be pleasing, apples of gold and pictures of silver, and medicine and not a detriment. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. If anybody needs